Are you ready for, drumroll, the first repot of spring? Right, let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, grab yourself a beverage, or don't, depending on what you want to do. Put this on the background whilst you're doing your own chores, or don't, just sit there and enjoy. But let's dive into the long repot that I do once a month now, and I think people are kind of coming to enjoy this, as am I actually. And yeah, let's just shoot the wind, I think that's the expression. Let's dive into it. Okay, I have scooched you all the way down whilst I try not to impale myself with a random plant. Does anybody do this where they're just like, put this plant down here for the next 2 to 3 minutes and I promise I'm going to move it, and 4 months later that is pretty much a little tree in itself and that is its new home, yeah? Or is it just me? I don't know. But yes, so loads and loads of topics and questions today. Thanks to everybody. I actually had a foresight this time around. I didn't leave everything to the last minute, and I put it on the YouTube community section and also on Instagram. For the people that have not been for one of these before, these are generally chatty videos where we talk about anything and everything. And yeah, there's going to be some planty chores that are going to get done. Interestingly today, and this is again a fair warning, this might not be for everybody, the main things that I need to repot today are to do with decorative plants. Some decorative plants. I might have to do a moss pole as well, an install rather than a creation. But these are plants that are going to be going in the garden. This technically is a tropical plant, however. There are a couple of vegetables that I need to sow as seeds, but this is the one time of the month now that it's very clear in my head that I can actually do some repotting. And guess what? With spring coming up, this is part of the repotting. It's not just my tropicals. So yeah, let's dive into it basically. Let me just tell you actually what this plant is. Shocking to nobody, no kind of like continuation to my thoughts as per usual. This is a Kobaye cathedral, I think. This is kind of a vining plant. I'll see if I can find a picture and put it here. It's very, very, very cool. And considering quite how much that has already grown, I put this in as a seedling about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, or like a seed essentially, and it's already doing all of this. So these all need to be put into their own pots. Annoyingly, I don't think I have enough pots. Oh no, I do. I should be able to separate some of these. But these are going to be very cool. They're climbers. Technically, they are tropical plants, and technically, you can grow these in something like a conservatory, an orangery. I love that word, orangery. But yeah, so might be not one that everybody's heard of, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And you can grow it in those spaces kind of year round. You can grow this in the house year round, and apparently it vines and it blooms like mad. So very, very cool. I'm gonna just have it outside as an annual because where would I put it in here? But right, let's have a look. I've got a list of questions. I've tried to group everything together. So let me have a look and see where we can start. Also, if I'm looking a bit kind of frenetic today, it's predominantly because if I'm looking a bit frenetic today, I haven't had much sleep because I've been doing too many extra bits over the weekend. Anybody who kind of knows or has to deal with tech, I got a new computer, which is also my personal computer and my work computer because I've got my own business. But that means everything that you can imagine it means if you've had to get and install a new computer and get everything over from the old computer to a new one. Headache, technological headache the last few days, but this is going to be my moment of zen. So we have got a good mix of questions. So let me see if I can kind of get this in a way that kind of makes sense. Cool. So we've got some gardening kind of and outdoor planty questions, plant collection, favorite type of questions, plant care and setup, some pest management questions, shocking coming into spring, and some seasonal plant care, some fun kind of topics, and then some personal and lifestyle. And if you stay until the very, very end, I've got a cool announcement. And I just, yeah, really, really happy to kind of share this with all of you. But that will be at the very, very end. So yes, let's start top down, shall we? So first question, interestingly, it's to do with the allotment. So I would love to hear your plans for the allotment this year. Have you done wildflower planting in your garden allotment? And a whole bunch of love, and a whole bunch of love back to the person who asked that question. So yes, there are going to be things that I'm planning for this year. So wildflowers, yes, I have done that at the allotment rather than the house, just because I kind of want to encourage as many pollinators as possible, because anybody who's ever tried to grow vegetables knows that we need the bees, and we need all the pollinators really. So yes, I have done that. I need to do it within measure, because there's the retired person's allotment police thing that goes on at our allotment. There's a lot of people with a lot of very big opinions, mainly, and no judgment, mainly because I don't think they've got anything else to focus on, and that's fine, but it's just a bit like... But yes, so I've put that there. And in terms of vegetables this year, so I've got like pots here that I'm going to be repotting the seedlings that I was just talking about now. So in terms of what I'm planting, probably a whole host of things. Interestingly, I have got some very, very cool, and I'll show you what the roots look like. That's some very healthy looking roots. They're very fine, which is interesting. I have got some very interesting plants. I've got the usuals, so you're going to see me today. I'm going to be planting in some of the kind of Asian greens, just because it's cooler at the moment. So I've got komatsuma, I've got some wongbok, and I've got some pak choy that's going to be happening. Also some lettuce, essentially. Predominantly, I don't tend to eat that much lettuce, but that is predominantly going to be to feed the chickens. And there is a chicken question that I'll come to in a bit. But yes, the allotment is going to be a whole bunch of normal stuff. So I'm definitely going to get some chilies in again this year. I really, really liked growing the chilies that I did last year. And the other thing that I'm hoping to get in this year of my own is going to be some bell peppers, because I've done okay with bell peppers, but not spectacularly. I'm going to have to deal with the allotment having some issues at the moment, because annoyingly over the winter, most of the plastic on the polytunnel has been chewed away, and as far as I can tell, there are some resident rats now that are living in the polytunnel because, and I mean, can't blame them. It was vaguely dry and vaguely warm in relation to the rest of the kind of fields around the place, but it's causing me an issue now when I need to start off my kind of polytunnel vegetables. So a lot of the usual stuff. However, interestingly, and I can kind of give you a bit of an update on this, the next time we do a repot, because I should have some of these by then, maybe not all of them, but I was watching YouTube and I can't remember who the person is. If I do remember, I'll kind of give them a shout out at the top there, who I think is Kiwi or Australian. I think he's Kiwi. And his whole thing is that he grows a lot of fruit trees, and he was talking about some smaller fruit trees, and I'm just like, ooh, let's have a look. And a lot of them happen to be kind of more or less tropical, I would say. The ones that I would love to grow here, because we used to get them in Cyprus, Greece has them a bit as well, but not as much, is something called loquats fruits. But I think that it's marginally okay to grow them in this country, but maybe not as well to go to fruit. I don't think they have an issue in terms of dying off because of the cold, but It's the timing of the fruiting that's the issue. If anybody's in the UK and has ever grown loquats successfully and outside and got them to fruit, please do let me know, because that is a plant that I would love, 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 love to get going. For my Greek viewers out there, this would be what we call musmula. But I've got a lot of really fond memories from when I was a kid of kind of having that as a fruit. So I'm really looking forward to kind of growing that. But yes, the tropicals are, I've got a Peruvian guava that's coming in, which is really, really cool. Apparently hardy for the UK. I think it will go down to -10. It looks a bit like a boxes for the outside. It has red berries that look a bit like blueberries, but red. And they go whitish green when they are ready and ripe. That's the interesting thing. They start off red, and it's when they change colour to non-red that they're ready to eat. I'd love to grow proper guavas. They are one of my absolute favourite fruits. Guavas and pomelos are my two favourite fruit. Very difficult to find in the UK. Pomelo sometimes a little, but so that's the Peruvian guava. I'm also going to be attempting to grow something that I'd never heard of before I saw it on this channel, which is ground cherries. And they're part of the Solanaceae family, so part of the tomato and kind of the not tomato, but like the nightshade family, where the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, all of these things are a part of. And they're very similar. The blooms are very similar. They've got kind of very, yeah, Solanaceae type blooms. So looking forward to those. And they look, I think they're related to the Physalis. But they're very, very cool plants. They're low growing, so I want to try those. What else have I got coming? Oh, I'm getting into my colognes, perfumes, all of these things, eau de toilettes recently, and a lot of them have got something called tuberose in. So I was able to find tuberose tubers to grow, and I think that is a tropical again. So I've got that arriving. What else have I got arriving that's a fun tropical plant? Because it was, why am I not remembering now what it's called? Pepinos, I'll put them up here. Part, again, I think, of the tomato nightshade kind of family, but they're very, very cool. I had never seen them before or even heard of them before, but then I saw them on this channel and I was like, oh my God, these are awesome. Imagine like a small-ish melon, so kind of like a ginormous pear almost. And it's apparently got a bit of a melony flavour, kind of leaning more towards cucumbery, but very, very cool. So that's another one that should be okay to grow over here. So I've got some seeds of that coming? Seeds of that coming, a full plant of the Peruvian guava, and seeds of the ground cherry that are arriving. Oh, and seeds of alpine white strawberries, which would be interesting to try, because I think those meant to fruit throughout more of the season. Essentially, it doesn't kind of stop when their growing season stops, if that makes sense. So that is what I am kind of growing, and things that I'm a bit more excited about this year. Another good question, what am I doing to prepare for spring and general tips for preparing for spring? I'm assuming you mean for houseplants, so I'll kind of talk to that. I think at this point, the big thing that I need to do, and I still haven't got round to doing, is ordering some of my predatory mite satchels, and I kind of need to do it. I'm already, I think, a bit late, because I tend to start now with the kind of cold tolerant general mites or predatory mites, because I found that they work really, really well for me, and they have done well in the past. So I need to get that going now. Watering is starting to get a bit more frequent in the space. I'm starting to see plants now that I'm watering as I was watering them a while back, and they are kind of struggling at the moment, so they kind of need a bit more water. So that is a good thing that's happening at the moment. I have got, Yeah, the other thing that I need to do is, remember the paint debacle that I had with the windows, where I can't, for some reason this time round, I can't unstick it, which is annoying because it was such a good product that I could just, and it's so gratifying to like peel it off, not unstick, but it peels off a bit like wax strips. Very, very cool, but this year it just baked on, I think. The windows were a bit too new, and of course this happened with the new windows. I would have never have tried this if I knew that this was going to be an issue with windows that I just installed in the conservatory, but because the crappy conservatory that I had before obviously had a lot of imperfections on the windows, it didn't stick to those, so they peeled off nicely, but these ones, I think that might be the issue. However, I've got a few solutions that I might do for that. So those are the two big things that I'm doing right now. I'm not doing any, I might try anthurium pollination again, because I know a lot of people have said, oh, are you going to try that again? I don't wanna, but I kind of wanna at the same time. So I might do something interesting, but I also want to see, and also if anybody's going to be doing anthurium pollination, make sure, oh, I can't remember what they're called. There's a grouping that happens with the types of anthurium, and you can cross-pollinate anthuriums within the same group. I can't remember, sections, I think it's sections. Within the same section, some sections will cross-pollinate okay with other sections, but certain sections of anthuriums with other certain sections of anthuriums will not cross-pollinate at all, and you'll get failed seeds or infertile seeds and all of these things. So bear that in mind. Do some research. It's not easy. There's very little out there unless you really want to dive into kind of more scientific articles, and even then you're kind of stretching it a bit. So bear that in mind. But yeah, that's the kind of big things that I'm doing. I'm curious as to what all of you are doing. So let me know what you're doing to prepare for your spring. This was from a dear, dear friend who I used to work with as well. And it's any recommendations for someone in Norwich who can reshape an overgrown laurel? Just be brutal at this point, I would say. Also, hi if you do actually watch this. I don't know if this individual ever really watches my channel, but this was on Instagram. We need to meet up soon for coffee, by the way. But yeah, just hack at it. There's loads. I can't talk from personal experience with laurel because I don't think I've ever grown it myself, but there's loads of videos on YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, it is a case of just start hacking it back. Don't go to the point where there's absolutely no leaves on the plant, because otherwise it won't be able to photosynthesize, but you should be able to start hacking back a bit and make it a bit more manageable for what you need it to be, if I'm assuming where I'm assuming it is in your property, basically. So that should make sense. If not, give me a call and I'm more than happy to kind of talk you through it, basically. Okay, next one. I'm trucking through these. I've already done 4 of the seedlings, which is great. Right, next one is, if I would be allowed to keep one species, including subspecies and varieties, which one would it be? It may be too hard to choose. Maybe pick a genus. Okay. Yes, it's just very hard to choose. I mean, if I only had to save one plant in my collection, 3 guesses as to what it would be. It's interesting. If I go on genus, this is I'd want to say anthuriums or Hoyas. I like my philodendrons, but I also find my philodendrons in the greater world of kind of aroids to be slightly more sensitive. Monsteras are easier, I find. Anthuriums can be challenging in themselves, but I find there's much more interesting kind of varieties of anthuriums out there. With philodendrons, I've kind of, at least from what's on the market, they're all starting to look a bit samey to me, and I get that a lot of people are really not that keen on these types of plants anymore, and I can understand it because maybe they're not as exciting because everybody's doing them. And again, I've covered the point on why everybody's kind of talking about them and growing them is because you get used to growing a type of plant, so it just makes sense to kind of keep growing the same type of plant, because then you don't have to kind of think too hard about the care that you need to give it. But yes, potentially yes, anthuriums, because of the wide spectrum of species within it and subspecies, and the potential of hybridization is kind of endless to a certain point. And Hoyas, just purely because forever will be a flower child, in the sense that I was the weird child who used to go and shove my face into all of the blooms and smell the beautiful flowers. So yeah, the Hoyas for the blooms more than anything else. And I know that that isn't the thing that you're going to be seeing on the Hoya most of the time, but those are my answers really, hopefully. That kind of covers your question. Anybody else who wants to kind of share what theirs would be, please do let us all know down below. Apologies also if I'm going up and down all the time, but I'm actually trying to do some repot because I'm also meeting a friend and I need to leave in like an hour and a half, and I'm expecting this video to be about an hour, and I'm hoping to film a second video. If I don't have enough time, I do have a backup video that I filmed a couple of weeks ago that I might end up using potentially. It's been a long few days, so that might happen regardless. This is a fun, chatty one, but I don't know if I've got it in me for another video today. I'll try. I will try my best. But right, moving on to questions. So the next question is, what was my first plant and what is the current favorite plant? I'll go on first plant that I kind of got when I got back into houseplants, and it was 3 plants, I think, altogether. One was a type of fern, and I cannot remember what fern specifically it was, on the lava rocks, and I've shared this before, and a bonsai forest, a Begonia maculata whitei, and there was one other one and I cannot remember. I also at the same time, it wasn't just 3 plants, it was 4 or 5 I think, I also got and I can never remember the name. It's one that's related to spider plants, but it's the one where the stems are like a neon orange and the leaves are wider and all of these things. I cannot remember what it's called. Loved that plant. Could not keep that plant happy. It's not as easy as a spider plant, regardless of what people tell you. And I know a lot of people actually struggle with the spider plant as well, so that should give you an idea. But I think those were the plants really, the first few that I got. I'm sure there was more. I did the usual things when everybody was starting to get into them. I had the Marimo moss bowls and all the other stuff, but those did not survive, mainly because I just didn't have the time or the patience to kind of be dealing with that level of like watering needs or kind of changing of watering. And I know it's supposed to be easy, but I actually found that to be quite challenging because it's not the usual type of house plant. So the fact that I had to do something entirely different discombobulated me. Sorry, I'm just collecting all the soil that had kind of dropped into here because this is some very expensive seedling soil. Every other year up until now, I made my own seed soil, but this year I just don't have the time, so I thought I'd try the John Innes seed starting soil. Anybody tried it? Let me know if it's any good. Because so far, I mean, it's okay. It's still a bit chunky. I'm still having to kind of like, I should really be sieving this. For the people that just deal with houseplants, the people that deal with the garden, they have to sieve. They don't have to, but they can, and a lot of people do, sieve their soil like they're panning for gold for the seedlings, because obviously they need to be as fine as possible so the seedling tiny roots don't get too jammed up. It should tell you something. But we're sitting there going, you know what, this unrooted cutting, it's going to have like a root, it's fine. Put the perlites in, all these chunky things that it can get stuck on. It doesn't matter with the aroids, but some of these that have got finer roots, it makes sense. But what was the other part of that question? What is my current favorite plant? Ooh, that is a good question. This is the question that probably stumps all of us. I'm trying to look around, I think if anything is speaking to me at the moment. Oh, I'll see if I can take a picture and add it because it's too high up now. My Philodendron splendid is looking very splendid, I'm sorry, at the moment. Very, very cool. It's sizing up, and I've actually got it air layering. Is air layering? Why am I forgetting my words today? Is air layering? Yes, when you put the moss around the nodes and you kind of keep that damp until it roots in and then you cut it off. And anyway, so I've got that. It's getting quite large and I kind of want to, now that it's sizing up quite nicely, I want to be able to chop it and put it onto a moss pole and get a big sizable plant that I'll have somewhere in the house rather than here. So that's the current favourite. Ooh, good question. Anything related to anthuriums or Hoya? I know we've touched on both actually at this particular moment in time. Favourites of both and the ones that you've struggled with. Okay, so struggle, I think it was the Flavolineatum anthurium. Let's see if I can get like a video from when I had it. Oh, I'm going to be re-adding that if I can find it from like Equigenera again to the collection, and hopefully this time it does not die on me. But generally speaking, I'm okay with most anthuriums. I still struggle with them at times. This is the worst time of the year for anthuriums for me because that in-between stage, and I've lost a couple of anthuriums, nothing major that you would have kind of seen, but there's struggle buses. I will link to the other video of when I went away on holiday and I came back to quite a few yellowing plants because they dried out too much hysterically enough at this time of the year. So there's that for anthuriums. Favourite anthuriums? I think you asked about favourites. Favourite anthurium, good question. Nigrolaminum Gigi. I really, really like that plant and it's absolutely huge for very little effort. I think I may have done a review. If I have, I will put it at the top there. Hands down, would recommend to most people. I think that would probably be okay, considering how fast it grows, probably be okay in household conditions. I might be wrong. Do kind of shout at me down in the comments below if you've tried growing it in a house and it just does not like it. But very, very cool. Hoyas, hands down one of my favorites, has been for a long time, mainly because I've got it to get as big as it is and it always, always blooms for me. And I'm not one to find all the kind of, I would love to, but mealybugs, to get all the kind of really specific types of Hoyas. I will get more of the mass markety type ones. Hoya, Australis, Lisa, variegated. Love. Ones that I've struggled with. There's a few that died recently, which I cannot remember, and I will put them up here. And it was mainly to do with my watering. Oh, numeralioides. Oh, I butchered that name. I'll put it up there. I have never been able to keep that happy. It's got quite a few leaves still. It hasn't died, but I would love to be able to keep that one happy. I do not know why I cannot. Oh, orchid question. I love a good orchid question. So, what orchids do I have? When do they bloom for me? This person's trying to build a small orchid collection and really want them to bloom 1 or 2 all year round if they could. They usually buy just Phalaenopsis and they bloom all winter long, and the rest of the year they're just looking at leaves. Any life updates would be interesting if you feel comfortable sharing. I will give you some life updates further down. But orchids, I have got a whole host. I'm not going to name every single one, mainly because I cannot remember them, but I've got quite a few bulbophyllum orchids. They're quite good. I have never managed to get them to bloom, so I do not know. My monkey face orchid, after years of trying, I think probably got overwatered, and I think that's pretty much rotted out now. So I'll see if I can re-add another Dracula orchid into my collection, maybe try something different, maybe try it in a different media. I do not know. Brassivola orchids, they are cool and they can have some really interesting blooms. Try the Brassivola nodosa if you want stuff that's going to be blooming more in the summer. It's interesting because same with you, Phalaenopsis tends to do better for me in the winter than in the summer, but I know if you also do a bit of a search online to see what kind of temperatures they like, I think there's intermediate, there's warm loving, there's cooler loving ones. If you go for the warmer loving types of orchids, they will do better at blooming for you in the spring and summer because that is their big season. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to think what else. Ironically enough, I've never grown a Cattleya orchid at all, I don't think. Some of my smaller orchids, the Twinkle Mona, that one's cool. I can't remember if I think that's a bulbophyllum as well, potentially. But those are the big ones. Coconut orchid. If you can find the coconut orchid, Maxillaria tenuifolia, definitely worth it, and that one does generally bloom for me in the spring and summer. So that's a good one to bear in mind. I think that was it for the question. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of the next questions that happened off the Instagram, they were all very similarly themed, and it's to do with begonias. So actually, whilst I'm sitting here, I should be really potting up. This is why I get distracted with things and nothing gets done. Memo focus. Right. There's a lot of begonia questions. So, bare paw aroids. Hi. I did, like, for the people that have been around for most recent videos, I did do a bit of a shout out for this kind of, I don't know if it's a competition, it's something that the community can get involved with. Somebody rightly said that there's other YouTubers that are doing it. I think he mentioned that the YouTubers, I'd never heard of this before, that other YouTubers were doing this, do it themselves, but I think this is for the wider community, but it's a really interesting one. I'll see if I can find that video and link it at the top there if you wanted to go and see. In terms of his comment or question was, how hard is begonia care compared to other aroids? I'm turning into a begonia boy. Welcome to the dark side. I've always loved begonias since I started getting back into houseplants, really, if I'm being honest. And they're not... In terms of aroids, yes, they are different to a certain point. I will say after years of growing begonias, I don't actually think they're as different as people think they are. So your kind of initial thought is, I need to treat them probably a bit like a fern because they've got very fine roots. Yes and no. It depends on the begonia, and it's not even as simple as saying they're rhizomatous versus the cane begonias. They're all the same. I found that each species can be very specific in what it needs. Very similar to, and rightly so from what people were saying about the alocasias, you can't treat all alocasias the same. Some of them are very different and it's very species specific. Some things will be shared in terms of overall care and the way that they react to certain things, but not everything. I'm also, sorry, looking at battery, so the battery doesn't die whilst I'm halfway through a sentence. But in terms of care, interestingly, what I tend to do is I will have most of my begonias, and this has worked across the board, as I was saying, is nothing that's across the board. I will have them in very chunky soil mixes, very much more so than you would think. I have most of mine, because I'm in such a humid environment here, in my Anthurium soil mix from Soil Ninja. And I think we had a conversation with this individual, and they were saying they might have it in a terrarium. I would definitely say you need it to be free draining, because begonias will love a terrarium, but then essentially you're going to be even in a bigger situation than what I am in here in terms of having a lot of great humidity. I find sometimes if they've got too much humidity and they do not dry fast enough, they will rot like that. So bear that in mind. A lot of people are very keen to keep them sapping wet. Try to avoid that. I would say if you can let them go slightly dry, that's the thing that's worked for most of my begonias. So that would be the one thing, but welcome to the dark side. You'll be fine. You will be fine. You will love it, but there's no going back. I'm sorry to tell you, there's no going back. What else? Where's the other? There's a begonia question that was together. Oh, here we go. Interesting random question as well with this one is that, what does my favorite color smell like? I have never thought of that. Good question. Favorite color for the people that have been here for a while, and this is going to be such a cliche. Two colors, so it would either be neon green or neon yellow. I'm not a discreet person in any way or form. I don't like to blend into the background, neither do the colors that I like. But neon green to me would smell fresh, like freshly cut lawn or grass. I know, cliche. And the neon yellow to me smells of summer and heat and Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Obviously, it's a very obvious connotations to the colours and what it kind of relates to my mind, but hopefully that answers your question. Very good question. Very good question. I'm just like, ooh. And then there was a second part to the question is, if it was possible to hybridize any anthurium with a begonia, what would it be? Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Interesting, and this speaks to the millennial in me, because I don't know how many other millennials had this. Maybe it was because I was a bit of a goth, but I had those leather belts with the studs on them, because I was I want to be punky goth, if that makes sense. But something like a Vitarifolium crossed with a Melanobulata or a Begonia ferox. So a leathery long leaf with spikes. Oh, that would be so cool. That would be so cool. Essentially, most crosses with a Melanobulata or a ferox to get the points would be really cool for most anthuriums. The only other thing I might say is a crystallinum, an anthurium crystallinum with a Begonia bravurimosa to bring in those fuchsia pinks into it, but then it would stay on the leaf in an ideal world. Very cool. Very, very cool. Great, great 2 questions. I really like it. Really, really like it. So what else? Do I have a planty terrarium? If so, what do I grow in it? I don't currently have a planty terrarium. I did. I mean, technically I do. So Spike, the crested gecko, has got a bioactive terrarium that he lives in. So it's got springtails, it's got isopods and all of these things. And I had the dart frogs, and they were in a bioactive terrarium, and they, for me, what did I put in them? And this is another good question, actually, because a lot of people would want to put aroids in, and I actually found that aroids, depending on how your terrarium is set up, do you have fan, do you have ventilation going in and out? Do you have lights on for how long? Does it stay warm? All of these things means that you kind of need to be careful about what you're putting in. And I can't remember what it's called now. The soil that I use most of the time for my bioactive ones tends to be, there's one that's like a really famous mix. It's like for botanical centres. I can't remember what it's called now. And I've used that, but because I've used that, which is slightly denser, and I've got good drainage at the bottom and a good water layer at the bottom with the leca and everything else is sitting there, I will lean more towards things like begonias, ferns, selaginellas are another one. Interestingly, you can get some air plants in there, just make sure they're not touching the soil because the humidity stays as high as it is. But think more water-loving plants. I haven't had the best success by putting any form of aroid in a terrarium, depending on how closed it is. So that would be my big thing. The things that I've just mentioned now is pretty much what's in Spike's terrarium and what survived in the dart frog terrarium, and that was a bio-olb air, which I no longer have. Sorry, I'm also planting the komatsuna seeds as well. So komatsuma? Komatsuma, not komatsuna, komatsuma. And right, moving on. Updated alocasia care tips, please. Just getting into them and feeling a bit lost. I hear you. This is going to be a video that I'm going to do soon as an update. In the meantime, I will link previous videos up the top there. A lot of that information still stands. A lot of that information still stands. I was hoping to do more of an update to do with jewel alocasias. However, I tend to find that I haven't cracked the code yet for that one, so I also don't want to say do this because it's worked for 1 or 2 plants when it probably won't work for all of your jewel alocasias. So yeah, hate it when the seeds are absolutely tiny and they're just like, these are size of poppy seeds, and I'm just like, ugh, can never drop just one. Right. All the focus and attention on this really briefly so I don't spill like 1,000 seeds. I do want to get at least two, well, there's too many seeds in there, at least a couple of seeds in there that are, so that if things go wrong, you've got more than one potentially. Just for the people before they ask, am I the same with the vegetables where I should be thinning out and getting rid of stuff? And I'm just like, I cannot possibly get rid of it. Look at these little cute little seedlings. It will stay and I have more than I ever would have ever have dreamed of needing, where I'm just like, I only needed 6, why have I got 25? But yes. Just in case you're wondering, I am the same with garden plants. That's probably part of my problem. So, yeah. Let's have a look. Sorry, I know that was a bit of a cop-out with the alocasia question, but it's a lot, and I would rather give you a proper answer, and hopefully the video will tide you over for a bit. I think there was somebody else that commented that was kind of going through the same at the moment, so we can all commiserate together. This is a good question. Which do you think is more water retentive, pon or chunky arrowed mix? Typically they use pon, but just put a Scindapsus in a chunky arrowed mix and heard an offhand comment that pon was more water retentive. Thoughts? Interesting. I can talk to the Scindapsus. I have tried growing Scindapsus in pon several times now, and I have, at least in my experience, have found that they struggle in it. I have always found that they do better in chunky arrowed soil mix, to be fair, but that is the reality for most of my plants. Water retentive, interesting. I still think the soil will probably be a bit more water retentive because there's more material there for it to saturate. And I'm talking about pon that is not sitting in a reservoir of water. If you're talking about reservoir of water, yes, pon is probably more water retentive because it's staying that bit wetter for longer, but not sapping wet and damp, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question. It's just my kind of 2 thoughts on that one. Another one is aborted philodendron new leaves, like way smaller than the previous one and all deformed. And I'm assuming this is, have I experienced the same? Yes, I think we've all experienced deformed, small or aborted leaves on philodendrons. Harken you back to the conversation I was having before about kind of more favorite type plants. This is one of the things with the philodendrons, and I'm just like, no, it could happen to any house plant, but I'm just like, oh, it happens so much more often to philodendrons. It's tricky because it could be several things. It could be a sudden change in its environment, I find, which would include lighting, temperature, humidity, watering. I think that actually probably is it. That's the kind of big thing. If it's detached from a moss pole, and it should still be attached to a moss pole, all of these things. Does it happen to me? Yeah, all the time. Hands down, hands up down below, how many other people, because I'm assuming it's not just me and the person who commented this. Yes, annoying, frustrating. Are there certain philodendrons that I find don't do that as often? Yes. Are there ones that tend to do it more often? I'm looking at you, Pink Princess. Yes. So if it's something that's kind of a bit disheartening for you, maybe see if you can find which ones, and again, maybe some of the people that are watching this video can put it in the comments below, that are more liable to do that and maybe avoid them, or maybe the ones that a lot of other people agree don't generally have that problem, go with those. That might help. Right, let me just write a label everything. I am looking at you. Anybody who's doing anthurium pollination this year and is going to get a gajillion seeds, label, especially if they're crosses, label, and especially if you're going to be doing more than one pollination, which most people do that when they do their first pollination. I'm just like, oh. I get like paintbrush happy. Look at all of this pollen that I'm putting on the blooms, and I'm going to get all of these hybrids. label, label. Do not do what I did where I got like 100 different anthuriums and I'm just like, I don't know what this is. And I did not know for months. And some of them I still don't remember or know what they were. So label, 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 label. Obviously if you're putting seedlings, label. Right. So that's all good. I'm not watering any of this just yet. I'll do that after the video, otherwise we'll be here all day. All right, let me put that down. Okay, next question. Ooh, good. When is the best time to repot, morning, or can they repot in the evening? You can do whatever you want to do. There are no hard and fast rules. I keep saying this. You do you, boo. It's fine. Like most of the plants will be okay. Sorry, I need a bit of coffee. Most of the plants will be okay. Generally speaking, is it a better idea to do it in the morning? Yes. And the very specific reason for that is, I'm going to give you a bit of an example. I've got pots in front of me. It's not very often I have like empty pots of different sizes that I can show you. So smaller pots, bigger pots. So if you're going from something like this to going 1 or 2 sizes up for this, what's going to happen is you're going to have all the soil around here. And even if you've just wetted this, even more so if that is, and you should be repotting at least a day or 2 after you've watered so that the plant has had a chance to get as much water as possible rather than it being stressed because it's thirsty and then you repot it as well. So you would do that, you would kind of pop the plant into the new kind of pot, the upper size. There's a whole bunch of soil that's going to stay very wet because it doesn't have any roots in it yet. So the theory behind this is if you do it in the morning, there's more time for light to be exposed to the plant, thus absorbing more of the moisture that was already in the original soil and possibly whatever it's touching on the new soil. So there's less of a chance of stress-induced or kind of repot-induced root rot because there's more chance for that water to be absorbed and also potentially evaporate if it's warm. So that would be the better option to do it. However, if you cannot repot anytime other than the evening, don't kill yourself trying to repot in the morning, just do it in the evening, it's fine. Maybe if you're doing that and you're worried about this, I would say repot into dry soil with wet soil, leave it overnight, do not water the new soil, and just do it the next morning. It will be fine, do not worry, it will be fine. The only caveat might be if you're doing something like a fern or something that's got very, very fine roots, fine. But for most other houseplants, it can wait until the next day. Like if this has still got some moisture in it and the root ball is still within the original soil, it'll be fine to wait until the next morning and just water it then. And then if you're really worried about it being able to absorb everything and not causing something potentially like root rot after a repot, that would be my top tip. Oh, love a good pest management question. What is my approach regarding pests? Am I more of a release some beneficial bugs or get the flamethrower out kind of guy? Have I ever had a huge infestation? Was it hard to get rid of? Yes to all of the above. I've done it all. So these days, it's more put some beneficials out there and it will be fine. Spot treats with the Castile soap spray that I've got now, which is a bit more gentle. Doesn't mean I need to do it more frequently, yes, but it doesn't stress out most of my plants, so it's fine. Even my velvet leaf plants are okay with that. Have I grabbed the flamethrower? And by flamethrower, it means dousing all my plants in systemic like Provanto? Yes. Did I have a big infestation? I thought so at the time. This was a few years back when I first got thrips and I had, what I can now say was an almighty meltdown going, panic. I've got thrips and everything is so bad. Doused everything in Provanto, it went away. It was still manageable, it wasn't in this space. I've never been, do I have a big infestation in this space? Depends on how you look at it. The mealy bugs are going to have to start paying me rent at some point soon in this conservatory. It just depends on the situation. And also, and I know that there's a lot of debate about systemic versus more organic pesticide or more kind of natural pesticides. I'm not going to dive into that minefield of a topic right now, but it depends on what you're comfortable with or what you think you need. Because the reality is I treated all of my thrips with Provanto. Could they have gone away without me being so harsh with them? Yes. Did it harm my plants? No. Was it a great idea for me to be inhaling those chemicals whilst I was doing it and possibly not wearing a mask in the middle of the pandemic when I had loads of masks around that I could have used? Yes. But do whatever you're comfortable with at this point in time and whatever will relieve your anxiety with it. Because ironically enough, these days, pests can do more psychological damage, hear me out on this one, than plant damage. And by that I mean there are so many people that are so worried about the pest damage that I'm kind of looking at people going, we're all meant to be doing this for our own improving our mental health. Why is this causing you this much anxiety? And it's not to shame these people, but it's just like, if it means that you need to use systemic so that you can sleep at night because you're so worried about the pests, use systemic. I'm just like, I mean, you need to take care of yourself as well. And I get it, I'm going to get some shit for this, but just use whatever you're comfortable with. That makes sense. If you're first starting off, systemic makes sense because you've never had to experience it before. After you've had a few bouts of like pests and a few spring, summers, autumns, winters, all of the seasons, you'll start trying the softer stuff because at that point in time, yeah, it's just easier. And yeah, beneficial insects pretty much hands down most of the time these days. Oh, a scandalo! This is an interesting one. I didn't expect a comment like this. One of the people commented and they said that they heard yesterday that there's scammers out there currently selling light or sun-stressed Hoyas as rare Hoyas. Buyers beware. Interesting. I was not aware of this at all. But I can kind of see how that would have ended up happening because there's a lot of Hoyas that I'm kind of looking at or have looked at in the last year or two, and I'm just like, isn't that just the same Hoya but just sun-stressed? They look the same, but it just looks like the same Hoya that I have but sun-stressed. I don't understand. So I think this has been going on for a while. But yes, obviously please do beware. Do as much research as you can, especially if you think that that is what people are trying to sell. There are people that are trying to make a quick buck, and that's not great. But also with the state of the economy globally at the moment, do I blame them entirely? It's not the nicest thing to do, but there are more kind of honest things to do. But if somebody needs to feed their child or their family and they're kind of broke, it might drive them to do something that's less than honourable. So try not to judge too much. Also try not to be taken advantage of, but try not to judge too much. You don't know what has potentially happened in order to cause that person to be there. I always try to see the best in people, and I have been burnt with this, by the way, in the past, but does that mean I'm changing? No. I still try to see the best in people that either they didn't know and they were selling it because they were sold that the same and they're selling it in the same way, or they weren't doing it on purpose, or if they were doing it on purpose, knowing full well that they were taking advantage of people, is because they needed to survive. This might not be the case because I know as well as everybody else do that there are some horrible people out there, so for no good reason. But yeah, just be careful. I did not know that, but interesting, because I'd kind of noticed something similar. I just assumed that I was just out of the world of Hoyas for too long and I just wasn't aware of what was going on, and there's all these new Hoyas that just look like sun-stressed Hoyas. Good question, and I think the next one is for the community actually, is like, how many of us have already started spring chores, whether it's home or plants? I will let you all discuss that further down. But yeah, it's Have I started chores? Yes. Yes, spring cleans predominantly at the moment. As I said, I'm doing all of this. I'm moving on to the bok choy at the moment. But yes, definitely started spring chores. I think there was some other commenter, I think this was on the YouTube community's posts, and they were just like, yes, and still doing the winter ones and the spring ones and the autumn ones and the summer ones. They're fine. I'm the same. I'm still doing last year's ones. But yes, I'd be curious to see, as well as the commenter, how many other people have started to kind of get going with their spring chores. As I said, not necessarily just plants in the house as well. I love spring, maybe because I'm a May baby and I like my whole family, we're all spring children. But I love spring. This is the time of the year where I really do kind of come alive. I've realized I should have done this before, where I should have just put some seeds in my hand and then just picked it and sort of... Listen, it's Sunday morning, my brain is not functioning. I've had 3 to 4 hours sleep every day for the last 3 or 4 days. And I know people with small kids out there, you probably got even less respect. But yeah, I'm feeling a bit worse for wear at the moment. So I am not firing on all cylinders. Right, what else? I'm kind of aware that I've got quite a few questions still to go. Is it? No, no, it should be all right. Oh, this was a funny one. This one made me chuckle. What does, where is it? Why do people describe plants as being sexy? I don't get it either. Honestly, I don't know. I'd never thought about that before. I just kind of accepted it as kind of canon that, oh yeah, we're calling plants sexy now. I don't know. I'm just like, all I've got now is some the notion of a really pervy man going, look at those petioles. The sinuses on that one are ginormous. I don't know. Maybe it's that kind of notion. I think maybe it's people that are really into their interior design as well, that it's something that they would call a couch or an end table sexy, because it makes them feel like it's something special. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but good question. Or good conversation starter, basically. I'm really curious to see what everybody else is going to say with that one, because I'm just like, are plants sexy? They can be. I mean, I guess. I don't know. It just depends on how people look at it, really. Right. Okay. So actually, all the rest of the questions are personal questions. So if you do not care, which I do not blame you, because not everybody does, feel free to jump. I'll put chapters on this video. Feel free to jump to the big announcement at the end for everybody else that actually wants to know. Stick around. So, first question is... So there's quite a few questions that are kind of along the lines of kind of life updates. So any life updates will be interesting if I feel comfortable sharing. I will only share what I'm comfortable with, so yes. And there was another one that was talking about life updates before. And oh, Hanstera, I love your comments sometimes. This made me giggle so much. I will read this out because it's worth reading out. I'm being nosy. I want to know all the tea. Like, what trinkets are you collecting? What new t-shirts you have thrifted recently? I'm interested in the minutiae. Like, what's in your fridge? But seriously, I just want to hear your thoughts. Like, what does your bathroom look like? You get it. No weird vibes memo. I know we have never met Hanstera in person, but based on the comments of the last few months, I can guarantee that if we met in real life, we'd end up becoming like best of buds. Because you remind me so much of my best friends. It's not even funny. So let me start with answering some of those questions first, and then I'll kind of go on to more general kind of like life updates. How am I doing on battery? Okay, we're doing okay on battery. So I will actually answer your question. So what trinkets am I collecting at the moment? Interestingly, a lot of, I don't know if they're classed as trinkets, but I like kind of crystal clusters, like decorative crystal clusters. So I'm kind of getting into that a bit more. Any new t-shirts I have thrifted recently? Not thrifted necessarily. New jumpers, the last time I kind of bought any form of clothes were new jumpers, the ones that everybody was asking about, the white one with the spider that we're still trying to figure out what it said on it from a few videos back when I went back home. Those were the big thrifts, not thrifts, but purchases. What's in my fridge? A whole bunch of food. Interestingly, a whole bunch of food that I have, for the people that have been here for a while and they've been aware that I've been on my like pre-diabetes journey. Good news, it's almost coming up to a year since my diagnosis, and I've got more for my own kind of personal peace of mind, and so I can track things, a continuous glucose monitor, so it's the thing that you stick in with a needle and it stays on and it kind of transmits to your phone all the time. I am back to entirely normal blood sugar levels. So long may it last, but my fridge is filled up with a lot of stuff that, no fun diet. Very few carbs, no sugars, all of the above. But the one thing that I have found works and helps a lot is kind of pickles and preserves and fermented stuff. In this household, there's about 5 to 10 litres of kimchi, the one with the napa cabbage, that I make myself at home, that gets consumed within about a month, month and a half. Possibly not even that. But all the kimchi, I'm really getting, it might be because I'm watching all the K-dramas, I'm really getting into a lot more of that like Korean cooking. I've done a lot of Japanese cooking in the past, some Vietnamese kind of dishes that I kind of love and I keep in rotation. But I want to try a lot of the banchan, I think it's called, with a lot of the side dishes in Korea, which I think kimchi is part of it, or it's its own thing. I'm not entirely sure. If there's any Korean viewers out there, hi, I'm really sorry. Feel free to correct me if you want. If not, I'm still doing my research, so we're all good. But there's a lot of that that's happening in the fridge. What does my bathroom look like? Depends. Depends. So you have seen, if you've seen my house tour, you will see one of the guest bathrooms, which is the one that had the horrendous like Artex ceiling. And after I skimmed all of, well not me, but hired somebody to skim all the ceilings when I moved into this house, because the entire house had Artex ceilings. Did not do that bathroom, and I'm just like, I'm stuck with it now. I'm not going to bring somebody to plaster just that one tiny ceiling because it's like the downstairs like guest bathroom. So I just decided to like paint it gold and stick some gold leaf on it and just make it into a horrendous feature. That one's also got some Gothic artwork on it. The main kind of bathroom is kind of very blah, it's kind of white. Got a bit of a kind of driftwood theme to it. Way too many hair products, face products, all of these things. You do not want to know my hair care routine, because this curly hair is a pain in the backside. Same with like a whole bunch of like face products, because I'm okay with aging gracefully, but I'm also not going to help myself age ungracefully, if that makes sense. But that bathroom is very uninspired, predominantly because this house was always meant to be a stopgap house. The next house is going to be the forever house. This one needed a lot of work, so I'm loathed to spend a lot of money fixing bathrooms, which can be really, really expensive, to bring it into exactly what I want to do, knowing full well that within a year or two I'm hoping to sell this and move to a house that has middle of nowhere with no neighbors nearby, so I can have a bit of a small holding and have some animals and all these things. That house I'll probably be doing more too. But in terms of other life updates, I know it's kind of sad, is what I was talking about before. It's actually because I've got my own web design kind of digital company, like changing something like a computer is a big deal. And it's for the first time ever that I've been able to afford a gaming computer, which means that I'm not going at snail's pace. So that's the big exciting thing at the moment. Ooh, family is visiting in a couple of weeks' time because Dad's birthday is happening, and it's the first time my parents are going to see this house since I bought it and moved in. So that is exciting. My siblings are going to be here as well, so it'd be nice to see them. So I'm going to be heading down to London for like a day and a half, and then we're all kind of coming back up together. But yeah, I think those are the big ones. I don't think there's any, kind of really not that exciting at the moment. Allotment is kind of getting back and going, which I know is technically not a life update, but it is for me because it's such a large part of my summer. And yeah, I think that's it in terms of life updates. Really boring. I'm really sorry. Let me just write down the label for this before I forget. Okay. So, pop that there. Let's have a look at some other. Let's have a look at some of the other questions. Do I have any kiddos? No. Other than the furry type, the scaly type, or the feathered type, no kiddos for me. Love like all of my kind of friends and families, kids, but not any kids for me yet. What are my best Zen moments? Really, again, it's a cliche and I've said it before. My kind of daily Zen moment and my best Zen moment by default is just finding a really, really good audiobook, popping it in my ears and just getting on with plant chores. Absolutely love that. Absolutely, that is my moment. Actually there's one more. The one thing I've treated myself, and I've always said if I have enough money to do this, and it's the only thing I treat myself with each month, is I go twice a month, every 2 weeks, and get an hour-long full body relaxing massage. None of the weird massages, it's just a regular kind of massage. But relaxing, I cannot do the ones that like break your back whilst they're doing it. I want to just zen out. My masseur is also really good at putting some Zen music on, and I just zone out. I do need to start getting back into my meditation, but those are my kind of Zen moments, really. And I think this might be the last question. Good one to end on a high, basically. How are we doing with time? Okay, and doing okay with battery as well. So, I'm also looking at the time going, there is a zero chance that I'm going to be able to film another video. I was hoping to, but it's good that I've got the backup because I need to be out of here in the next half an hour and I still need to get changed. So, bit of an odd question. What are my thoughts on owning chickens? I would love to have some. Welcome to the dark side. I have loved owning chickens, more so than I could ever guess. There was a point, I don't know if everybody gets this when they're into plants, where all of your friends just buy you all of the planty paraphernalia, either plants or soil or like accessories for plants or propagation things or t-shirts or mugs and all these things to do about plants because they're just like, you're so passionate about this. To put it into context, my friends did that as well. In the last year or two, I'm getting a lot of chicken-related paraphernalia as gifts these days. So I might be slightly obsessive with my chickens. It should tell you something as well, the fact that I want to also, not just because of the chickens now, I've always wanted this, but I'm planning on adding a lot more because chicken maths, and I cannot do the chicken math thing because I can only have up to 5. I have maxed it out at the allotment. I cannot have any more. But when I get my own place and I've got no neighbors anywhere near, watch me turn into crazy chicken man. Really good, really good. But I've enjoyed it. There are a lot of buts and maybes. There are so many great chicken owning video channels out there, and I'll see if I can kind of put a couple of my favorites up the top somewhere there so you can see. If you haven't added that in yet, watch some of those. They go into a lot of details into what you need to be prepared for, the realities. Watch the realities ones first before you get too enamored. You need to know what you're getting into going with your eyes open. The other thing I will say, buying the chickens, the chicks, or the eggs are the cheapest thing you're going to do. Everything else is expensive. Also, it's a living thing more so than even plants. You need to be checking in on your animals quite frequently, so make sure that you've got the time to do it. But I will say something. When I met Johnny at some of the events that we were both talking at, the Bearded Plantaholic, because he's got chickens as well, and I was telling him about chickens, and the first thing he said is just like, did they change your life? I'm just like, oh my God, yes. He's just like, I wasn't expecting it. I'm just like, neither was I. I don't know why. But yes, highly, highly, highly recommended, as long as you're okay with all the realities going into it. But yeah. Right, I think before the camera dies, I'll do the big announcement now. So, I am doing Malvern Spring Festival again this year, which is happening on, if I'm not mistaken, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th, I think. I'll put the dates at the top there. And thank you, obviously, to the organisers for inviting me. This is obviously not a sponsored section to do the video, but it is a section where I talk about the things that I'm going to do at the event. So I'm sponsoring myself. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing two things this year. So I'm going to be doing a talk, and let me bring up the official title because it took me a while to find the title. And it is Plant Whispering, Decoding Your Houseplant Signals. Now, something to bear in mind with this as well. So the event, because it's so large and it's not just for houseplants, although the houseplant one did great last year. I don't know if I actually shared this with you, but they were trialing having a houseplant section last year, and this is some inside goss as well. And they thought it was going to do okay, but I think it ended up becoming one of the biggest tents or kind of areas for the whole thing. It was so busy all the time. But again, remembering when I'm doing talks, and all of us are doing talks for places like this, is we need to talk to some of the advanced people, the intermediate people that kind of watch our channels and maybe come to see us, but also a lot of people there are beginners. They've never done anything like this before. So I thought, what topic can I do that addresses everybody? And I thought that one might be an interesting one. So, but yeah, and then I am also doing a workshop this time around on the 9th and the 10th. So I'm doing the talk, I think, on all 3 days, possibly 4 days. I think 3 days. And the workshop is only on the 2 days, and it is, if I'm not mistaken, I will put the links to the workshop down below because that part is ticketed. The talk is, as long as you're in the event, these talks are free. Anybody can sit there and listen to us talk, and I'm going to have slides hopefully. But the workshops are going to be about plant mounting onto the wall, and the organisers, and understandably, they're just like, the ticket needs to include all the materials and all these things, because I'm just like, oh, are the people coming going to bring any of their own stuff? They're just like, no. I'm just like, okay, so if anybody who's mounted a plant before, they know, because I'm getting all the materials and everything in order to, so you can just truck up and you'll go home with a mounted plant that you will be mounting together with everybody else. So yes, and I think the price for that one is £35. But anybody who really wants to come and say hello, you can come to the talk, you can come to the workshop. Either one is fine with me, whatever you want to do. But I would love to see all of you. I live for events like this where I can actually have the proper interaction. And I know it's not easy for everybody to get there. And I know a lot of my subscribers and viewers aren't even based in the UK. So it's not necessarily an option. I am still working on finding a way of how and where I can come to in the US so I can at least meet some of you in one of your events that you do over there. But for the people in the UK, hopefully I shall see you at the Malvern Spring Festival this year. And anybody who's going to be there on the 9th of May, that is also my birthday, and I'm doing both a talk end a workshop on my birthday, so do come over, say hi. If you remember, say happy birthday as well. I'd love that. But yeah, I think that's everything from me. This is a long repot session. I don't know how much of this is going to get edited out, and wish me luck because I'm doing it on the new computer this week. I've still got my old computer, so if I can't, I'm just going to do it on that because... but yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you all here soon, and I really, really hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.